Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by, see my screen, my light's blinding me, Righteous Force, Neil, 10th Man Rising, Arwin, Brian's Logic, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Whoa.
Mic check,
Let's
mic
get
check,
it
mic check.
on. Let's get it
Hey,
on.
good afternoon.
My mic check good?
We were talking to you in the pre-show, Gene.
Yeah, but now this is the Blue Yeti.
Oh, you got your Yeti plugged in. Oh, well, that makes all the difference. Clear as
Well,
crystal.
can you tell
It
the
does.
difference?
I
Very
can
good.
tell the difference. It's good.
It is good. Should we do a bit of
Live from Dallas,
housekeeping?
Texas.
Let's see if we can do it in a bit of reverse order, so we at least cover some of the questions that we never even...
Can we have intros?
Gene, please stop doing that. Please. So we'll go in reverse order. We'll do a bit of housekeeping, but we'll start with questions we don't often get. So any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of the presupposed spherical Earth?
No evidence whatsoever, because the Earth is presupposed to be a sphere with a molten center. You can't even get the sphere part right, so why do we even go there?
Any evidence of the R value that it's based on?
There we go. So you need an R value to have a sphere, and we've been asking for the longest of time, show us the R value. And they gave it to us in math. It's 3959 miles from the center to the surface of the sphere Earth that they say we're on. And according to their math, Earth curve, horizon, would have limitations based on observation height of the observer. And the black swan shows that's beyond its limitation, meaning that Earth curve isn't where it's supposed to be, and it changes with the weather, which is precisely what we've been saying is perspective and weather conditions. Optical.
Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
I'll let someone answer this one.
Artificial Intelligence answered. You can check out that video, I released it yesterday. So it's called Artificial Intelligence Knows Outer Space is Fake. Do you? And it's got a picture of Wheatley from Portal in space with a little clip of... I couldn't find a good example of this because the only diagram I've got is a simulation with a little crappy picture of an Earth that's spherical with the gas expanding into the sky vacuum. It's not a great depiction of it. But what I found in the Portal archives, because it's quite an old game now, was Wheatley being sucked through a portal from Earth to the moon. Now, upon doing so, all of the gas suddenly rushes through the portal. It's like, but as they're looking back at Earth from space, it's like, well, what's keeping the gas from doing that on that planet over there? What's the difference? There isn't one, right? It's just another cloud-based planet in a sky vacuum without the gases expanding into it. Why would you need a portal to the moon to suck all the air out? Nevertheless, it shows a picture of Earth with gases rushing into a sky vacuum, which was quite useful for that demonstration, hence is on the thumbnail. But anyway, if you want to check that out, it's called Artificial Intelligence Knows the Sky is Not a Vacuum. Do you? Or knows that outer space is fake? Do you? So check it out. That's been released yesterday. But is there any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container?
Well, just think about the words you're using.
Negative.
It's a good question. It's a good question, but the words you're using. If you have gas pressure and a vacuum, I mean, that's like an oxymoron situation here.
It is.
A vacuum would be the absence of gas pressure.
Exactly. The sky's described as an absence of gas pressure. It's like, well, okay. Well, where does the vacuum begin? Because if we've got gas pressure here and there's nothing between us and the sky vacuum, then as they rhetorically give to us, there's a gradiated gas pressure going up to the sky vacuum. Well, therefore, there's gas pressure in that sky vacuum and it's not a sky vacuum. But further to that, you reassert as a fundamentalist religious ball-believing fundy that it's a 10 to the minus 17 tour space for gas to fill. Well, gas is going to fill it. That's what gas does. It's not going to stick around on a sphere.
They got another problem. They also claim not only 10 to the minus 17 torr of vacuum, they also claim we got gas pressure here on Earth, and somehow where those two meet, they behave themselves. But they're able to get rockets and so-called satellites into this vacuum with no problem.
Yeah, and it'd be no problem for the gas to do the same and we'd all be dead. Any scientific
Correct.
evidence of gravity?
Science.
Well, the only one is when you're dead, they put you 6 feet under, but that's after you're dead.
What's that got to do with gravity?
Nothing. That was just a joke.
Very morbid.
Yeah, it is morbid. No, there's no such thing as gravity. Neil deGrasse Tyson picking up a microphone, putting energy, taking it out of a place of rest, say that it was sitting on the table, and then dropping it, and saying that describes some central force from the Earth pulling it. You can laugh all the way to the bank with that one.
I still think somebody should make a video as Neil deGrasse Tyson. And when he does that, instead of him dropping a mic, that microphone is actually a helium balloon and it goes up. I would love to see that done.
Well, it's ludicrous the way he's doing it anyway. He's got something heavy in the medium of light air. Everything will drop that's heavy than air. Everything, not just mics. But then to jump from that and say that it's because of this thing called gravity, because you need it to keep your oceans on the ball, and that is a joke. Because you can't even keep a gas particle on the ground.
But that's their rhetoric. Right?
Well, I know, but a gas particle is much lighter than ocean water combined together, and you can't even keep one gas particle on the ground. But there's no such thing.
That's what puzzles me. He don't know that? This guy doesn't know that?
Of course he knows that. He's a priest.
Okay, well, we're going to be covering a video that's been suggested by 10th Man, which is specifically about gravity. And it's another big think. We've done a few of these. I don't know what it is about big think and their anti-flat earth / globe earth rhetoric, but clearly that's their thing. So fine, whatever. That's what we're covering today. So this is big think. Erik, how'd you say his name?
Verlinde.
Huh?
Verlinde. It's actually Sleeping Warrior introduced me to this guy over a year ago, and I found him again, and I watched this video, and it's very, very good for our show because of what we've been covering with AI and the subject of gravity and how it only exists in the math. This guy basically admits to this towards the
gravity,
end.
of course, is something that well, many people have already thought about it. It's something that we see every day, and it's not like it's...
Off to a very bad start. Something we see every day? No, we don't. What's he talking about? Are we supposed to...
I don't know. I don't see it.
I don't see gravity.
It's
right. I don't see bending pseudo-Riemannian force space-time. I don't see bowls. I don't see wells. I don't see lensing. These phenomena they ascribe in the sky to being the effects of gravity aren't something that you and I see every day. That's absolute horse crap.
Exactly.
Well, the reason he's saying that is because they programmed us from birth that when something falls, that's what we're seeing. It's not that he sees it in actuality. It's the programming he's affirming.
Okay, well, again, I'm going to disagree with that because daily I look out the window and see clouds. But daily I don't see things falling. Where do I see things falling? Okay, when it rains, but as a general rule of thumb, unless I spill a drink, when are things falling? I can pour things maybe once or twice a day, but as a general rule, things are in equilibrium. And there's an exception to that, which is when I look out the window, anything above the horizon isn't doing that.
Nathan, there's an opening for redemption when the proper question is asked, like you just did.
Okay.
When that question is never asked, you're missing the cipher to decode the programming. So you're still in the programming.
Okay.
Not existent in our every life. But what I mean by that it's an illusion is that one would eventually like to know where it comes from, an explanation. Up to now we have, well, descriptions. I mean, Newton, of course, is the one famous for first writing down a theory of gravity.
Not a theory. So Newtonian gravity, right, wouldn't be deemed a theory because it hasn't got any scientific validation and hasn't got an observed phenomena. The phenomena being claimed in Newtonian gravity is that mass attracts mass. Mass does not attract mass. That is simply not the case.
And he could describe why apples fall and why the moon goes around the earth.
Why apples fall, excluding the fact that they've grown over a very significant period of time using huge quantities of energy to grow up from the ground, to then be placed in disequilibrium for the benefit of reproduction, to fall later. So there's a huge amount of expended energy that's been ignored in Newtonian explanations for why apples fall. Oh, but also why we assume the moon falls in an orbital motion around a spherical Earth, and the Earth falls in a spherical orbital motion around the sun. Right? No. You see, I don't look at apples falling all day because they're not. But I do see clouds every single day. There's the odd exception to that. But for the most part, no, things aren't falling like apples unless they expend a huge amount of energy to put themselves into that position so they can benefit themselves by reproducing in that way.
Using the same basic equation for gravity, but he described it. He had to assume that gravity...
And by equation for gravity, you mean calculating the disequilibrium in air with solids, right?
He was there. And then had to write down a law that described that when two masses...
It's not, laws would be descriptions that are inviolable. Things that occur in nature always, and the descriptions thereof. A Newtonian quote-unquote law was never a law to begin with, because it wouldn't be violatable in any way, shape or form if it was ever to be considered a law. It wasn't, it isn't, it never was.
Are at a certain
Nathan,
distance.
Yes.
Pause, please. Can you just back up and just listen to what he said this next go around for just what he said the last 7 seconds? Just back up and just let him say. Okay, he said something key.
How they attract each other. But he was also not very happy with the fact that he should just assume that these things, these objects, attract each other and without even anything in between. So if there are two masses in empty space, there's no nothing that really happens between them, but still.
Or to put it another way, mass doesn't attract mass.
They're attracting each other, and he thought that was...
But they are still attracting each other, so there's nothing in between them making them attract each other, but they are still attracting each other. No. See, that's a contradictory, nonsensical, Newtonian double-speak assertion.
Kind of mysterious, and that...
What's the mystery of the double-speak of why things with nothing between them aren't attracting, yet they are still attracting?
Was something he would have had liked to explain in a better way.
Explain what? You got two masses, they're not attracting each other. But what if I assume, comparable to an orbital moon, that they are, because moon's falling? This is nonsense. This isn't something
Nathan,
a circle that needs squaring.
Nathan, we do have what he says. If you go to Master D for a second, I put that excerpt of what he did say. Let me know when it's up, I'll read it. And this guy's tying, hey, good morning, Chocolate. And this guy's tying exactly to this citation that Anthony gave us.
Okay, go on.
It is inconceivable that inanimate brute matter should, without the mediation of something else, which is not material, operate upon and affect other matter without mutual contact, as it must be. If gravitation, in the sense of Epicurus, be essential and inherent in it. And this is one reason why I desired you would not ascribe innate gravity to me. The gravity should be innate, inherent, and essential to matter, so that one body may act upon another at a distance through a vacuum without the mediation of anything else, by and through which their action and force may be conveyed from one to another, is to me so great an absurdity that I believe no man who has the philosophical matters a competent faculty of thinking can ever fall into. Gravity must be caused by an agent acting constantly according to certain laws. But whether this agent be material or immaterial, I have left open to the consideration of my readers. That's Isaac Newton.
Keyword absurdity.
So later came Einstein, and Einstein, with his theory of relativity, eventually...
Not a theory. So bending conceptual medium isn't a theory. Scientific theories are backed by scientific validation based on cause and effect reasoning with a validatable hypothesis actualized in a test known as an experiment, followed by a description of that validated experiment, which you can call a theory. Einstein had none of the above. It's not a theory.
Realized that also gravity has to be described in a different way, and it took him quite some years.
Why? When mass doesn't attract mass, you have to describe the non-phenomena of mass not attracting mass in a different way. No, you don't. It's absurd.
But then eventually he wrote down a theory.
Here we go again. He wrote down a theory. No, theories come out of systematic experimentation based on hypotheses that suppose the cause of a natural phenomena. That's not what Einstein's doing. Scribbling stuff down, that's not that.
Where he thought about space and time together.
He thought about it, so it's conceptual. It's kind of derived up in the Einstein mind's eye of this idiot. Yeah, that's what it is. Him thinking about it. Right? In science, you validate the cause of naturally occurring phenomena. That would be to say if gravity, his thoughts and feelings and musings on this idea that he's got, were to actually be considered in physical terms, then you'd experience them physically and ask why they happened. Yeah, he's not doing that, is he?
But then how did he get away with it?
And then his explanation of what gravity would be is that...
Sorry, what gravity would be based on his musings and thoughts? Yeah, I think we just covered that.
There's masses which curve space and time. And
space and time. See, time isn't a spatial dimension. So space and time? When qualifying how long things take, because we've managed to derive a system to describe it based on various aspects of the world that we experience, including the lights in the sky. That description, we were asked in the pre-show if certain physical occurring phenomena, which are described with maths, only exist because of the descriptions in maths. This is the opposite of that. This is something in maths, derived in the mind's eye of Einstein, being ascribed to needing an explanation. It doesn't. It's been dreamt up by some guy.
Then the motion of planets and...
Oh, I see. So suddenly, from the musings of Einstein to the motions of the fundamental premise of the world and the lights in the sky. Yeah, anybody else seeing how absurd this whole Einsteinian nonsense is?
Of the Earth around the moon, or the moon around the Earth.
So what, with the begging the question fallacy of the heliocentric system very much intact when he made these musings?
Is then described by thinking...
Notice how we got a lot of described. In science, explanations are provided because you've seen something happen and asked why it happened. And then you go forth to try and validate the cause of that effect. Now that's an explanation as opposed to a description. Who's doing that? Yeah, Eli. Thanks, Eli.
Thinking about...
No, that was me, I'm sorry.
Moving in this curved space-time and how then objects are...
So now we're moving through curved space-time. So within 3 sentences, we've gone from Einstein's musings to there being orbital motion and a time dimension / or quote, space and time, to now we're moving in this theoretically imagined by Einstein medium he described in maths. A 4th dimension. Utterly and thoroughly absurd.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I hear a lot of description, but I don't hear any experiment. So it's not science, any of this.
No, it isn't.
Well, making their orbits. And the reason they go around then in circles is that...
So reason, that would be an explanation, wouldn't it? When you give reasons for things, that's explaining why they happen. And the begging the question fallacy of orbital motion that is assumed with the musings of Einstein's gravity dreamt up in the mind's eye of Einstein, and then here we are giving explanations for it. Well, we're very much going to have us moving through geodesics in space-time. Because suddenly the world that we experience through time dilation in a sky that's been used to derive a convention of things and how they elapse to our experience, aka time, is now a dimension. No, it just needs somebody like me to break down this absolute absurd nonsense for people who are listening. Because if they actually think about it for more than a few seconds with somebody seeming to be intelligent describing it to them, they realise that they're travelling through time as a medium, something physical, and then listening to nonsense bullshitters describe how they can bend and dilate time and travel through it like you're in a DeLorean. This is utterly absurd. Of course,
Nathan,
everybody's
may I
brainwashed
comment
with this
here?
because of all of the propaganda that we get through the movies and the TV about what time isn't. How it's somehow a dimension. How somehow we've got parallel universes and timelines. Go on, Tent.
Nathan. Yeah, Brian, you want to go first?
No, hello everyone. I go after you then.
Okay, yeah. So remember at the beginning where he's having a problem with his programming of mass attracts mass. So, okay, we have to find another way. So the programming is so strong that since the mass attracts mass fails, and giving him a clue that they lied about gravity and maybe he should get deprogrammed, they just go to Einstein as a pivot point to figure out another way to explain the programming. So they stay within the programming of the lie of the sphere Earth. This is what's happening. So mass doesn't attract mass. We couldn't do it. There's something's wrong. So now we're going to look at it this way, rather than saying, wait a minute, if mass doesn't attract mass, I've been lied to. Instead of waking up, now he is in position to program people, because the first programming wasn't good enough. He's going to help the program move on. The lies.
that
What I would
space and time
say,
itself.
sorry, Nathan.
Sorry, I completely forgot that you were there, Brian. My bad. I'm sorry. Can I just do a quick shout out, if you can hold that thought for just 1 second? Shout out to Humble H. He says, not at all. I'm quite short with him in the pre-show, and he's now giving me money. That makes me feel incredibly guilty. Humble H has given me $10 because he asked about light diffraction. And I told him. So he's given me $10 for it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the support, actually, Humble H. I'm not going to turn it down. Thank you for the super chat. Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it concise. Two things. One, Newton used the word gravitas in his Principia Mathematica. Gravitas means weight or heavy. Gravity is a bastardization of that word, and it refers to a cause of weight or heavy. Whereas the words sound the same or similar, but they have two completely different meanings. As gravitas does not have anything to do with a claimed cause. That's gravity. So the word gravity was not something that was in his original Principia Mathematica. Secondly, Einstein said that we would observe apparent orbits, and because who observes orbits? Can you observe the back of Jupiter? You can't. You only see whatever would be that you see. You see one thing. You don't see anything going behind anything. So orbits are pre-assuming that they exist, that they're a pre-assumption.
Right. I get to string a few decent words together that sound nice together now. So gravity is an etymological bastardization of gravitas. There's a string of words you weren't often hear.
Yeah.
Hey Nathan,
Yes.
does that have any correlation with gravitas, the other word, meaning with grace or something like that?
Well, there's different. You're saying if somebody speaks with gravitas, has that got connection? Yes, because the word is being implied to mean speaks with weight. In the same word, you can contextualize it with inference to language. And does that have a connection to weight? Yeah, it does. Linguistically.
The more you know.
Also seriousness, right? Because like when they say like you don't understand the gravitas or the gravity of the situation,
Yes.
it's like the seriousness of it.
The weight of it. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
The pressure this situation could create in a downward vector is obviously what they mean.
In a downward vector, of course, yeah.
Itself is curved in the sense that things don't move in straight lines anymore, they go around. So that was his explanation, but he had
Things that he's describing that were moving in straight lines but aren't moving in straight lines anymore were things that weren't necessarily moving at all, but are described as being moving in a heliocentric motion. So the lights in the sky, for example, have changed how they moved many times in the last 500 years. And the descriptions that mathematicians and astronomers have ascribed to those lights and how they move has changed and been argued about and has had huge amounts of money. That reminds me, actually, I've been sent a book by Dr. John Dee that's called The Church, I'm going to have to look at the book to get the title now, but something about astronomy in the church is the title. And all it does is go through some of the things in more detail that are basic understanding of to begin with, and it's nice to go through what is basically a very heavy bit of reading and be able to actually churn my way through it because I've got a base understanding of what it's describing. And what it's describing is the church's vested interest in figuring out when the hen Easter falls, because the Gregorian calendar isn't really matching very well with how the luminaries work when they're all on different cycles. So if you're going to say that we're going to work on a Monday to Friday with a Saturday and Sunday weekend, and Sunday's the day of rest and church going, and that's when we have Easter, but the Easter's going to come after the vernal equinox, but the Sunday after the full moon after the vernal equinox isn't something that's easy to just disseminate to the churches really easily so they can plan when they're going to have bloody Easter, because we're working off this stupid calendar that doesn't work. So we're going to argue the toss about a way of figuring out how the motion of the stars actually tracks, so we can figure out with meridian lines where we're going to say Easter actually falls. For that, they spent an absolute shed ton of money in the last 500 years and argued the toss back and forth, right, to get to where we are today with descriptions and models of how the lights in the sky move. And that's all it is. When you get to this stage with this guy's talking about gravity and things falling around and moving in straight lines to be then described as moving through bent time dimensions, aka bent geodesics, you've got the reification of a time dimension to explain away a phenomenalist phenomena. That would be mass attracting mass to explain how we're stuck to a bloody ball, moving through a vacuum, with the other lights in the sky orbiting around a sun, rather than us observing how they don't seem to make sense from our vantage point when we try and study them, which is the reality of the situation. Almost 100 people watching. How long have we been? Oh, we're half an hour. That's about right. Shout out to the people who shared the show. That's why we've got almost 100 people watching. Hopefully we'll get to 150 today. You never know how it'll go. Getting very passionate about this guy talking about gravity. It's not even my specialist subject. Where's Anthony when you need him?
he had to
So
write
you're
down.
saying the solar system don't exist?
The solar system is a system that's described as sun-centric. Solar-centric, heliocentric. That's sun at the centre. Us moving around it on a physically large mass that's not creating any effect or phenomena for us to study beyond the lights that we're trying to explain by having us physically move to generate no effect to have as a phenomena. It's a workaround for us not knowing how the bloody lights in the sky work. That's all heliocentrism is, as beautiful and as eloquent as you might want to describe it. We're not on a ball. Somebody placing us on one to mathematically try and square a circle that they can't figure out with the sky and how it works and the patterns. That doesn't mean we're stood on a bloody ball. Shout out to a couple of super chatters.
We do know how the stars in the.
We know they're going to be above. That's for damn
Go
sure.
ahead.
You're breaking up a little bit. I'll just do a couple of shout outs. Rubinson Gaydon, thank you very much for the super chat.
Do you want to shout it out?
I am. Rubinson Gaydon, thank you for the super chat. What goes up and don't come back down in the globe? Question mark. What goes up and don't come back down? gas. Although strictly that's not true either, because it goes in all directions. You know, occasionally it's going to hit another gas particle and bounce in the opposite direction, which may very well be down. So, but thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate the support. Also, shout out to Misfit FB850. Should I read this before I read it out? When you mention things don't fall unless taken from equilibrium is kind of profound to me right now. Keep up the good work, Nathan and panel. Okay, so he's saying things aren't going down unless they're taken and removed from equilibrium. Yeah, that's an Anthony Riley thing. Again, he's getting a lot of mentions today. So he described it accurately as fall arrest. Because if you've got something that's in that equilibrium as you described it with your super chat, imagine the Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. You know, when Wile E. Coyote gets to the edge of the cliff and the cliff falls away, and he's just left stood there, and then he looks down and realises there's no cliff and then falls down. Well, before the cliff broke away, if he just sat there and didn't do anything, he's in quote-unquote equilibrium, but he isn't in equilibrium. He's in fall arrest, because he's still significantly above the surface, which could be, you know, down below the cliff with a sea front and a beautiful view, or whatever in the cartoon. But the example stands. You know, you can be in quote-unquote equilibrium, but still find that the thing beneath you or holding you or in fall arrest isn't strong enough to maintain your weight and eventually breaks, and there's a significant amount of air, which you are more dense than, to fall through beneath you until you reach the next thing that's more dense than you are to stop you again, put you in fall arrest. But you might reach the ground on the beach and go, right, well, that's it now, equilibrium. And then suddenly the ground starts falling and you go into a cave below the surface level. You know, you're still in fall arrest. Anyway, really good super chat. Thank you very much. And I'm glad that it's been profound to you. Anybody else?
Sorry, Nathan.
Yeah, go ahead.
My fish died and it went up and it stayed up for quite some time.
Such a sad story.
Just trying to answer to the question, what goes up, it doesn't go down. Yeah, my fish.
Oh, did you have a little service? Did you want us to maybe pay some respects to Goldie, the goldfish? No? Moving on.
Equation for it, which again assumed that gravity is there, because he basically wrote down that.
There you go. That sentence sums it up beautifully. Couldn't have done a better job of summarising exactly the situation. Let's just read it out as it's subtitled. Which again assumed that gravity was there because he basically wrote it down. Oh no, I didn't have the it. I've paraphrased slightly. My bad. That wasn't intentional. Yeah, there you go. It's assumed to be real because Einstein wrote it down. Okay, that should wake a few people listening up to what the real situation of gravity is. Go on, whoever, in G+.
Hey.
If that's right.
Who's saying hey, hey?
That's right.
That's right.
Oh, hey, Flatsoid. Sorry, I didn't see you come in. I'd just let you in without looking who it was. Good to have you. We're covering...
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Covering big
By
things.
the way, I wrote unicorn farts down on a paper. Does that make it real?
Strictly speaking, yes. Apparently very good for what ails you.
That the matter curves the space-time. So in a certain way, that's still a description, or what I should say is, well, one would like to understand again why this description sort of, how you can understand.
He can't even phrase it himself. How this description of something that doesn't happen that Einstein wrote down is what requirement of any consideration whatsoever by anybody. Yeah, that would be how I'd phrase it. In the same way as we could ponder all day about how we should... Fuck me, what is... Go on.
I'm sorry, it's probably my internet is sketchy. It was a quiet part. I was going to say, matter curves space-time. What proof does he got for that? If you break each word down, what could possibly cause what he's saying?
It's strictly inaccurate, and if I didn't catch him say that, if you're saying that's how he phrased it, then he's wrong in how he's phrased it, because the strict definition would be to say that the uneven distribution of mass causes the curvature of space-time, aka gravity. So gravity is the effect in Einsteinian bending fourth dimensional space-time, but the cause is the uneven distribution of the mass, which previously just attracted itself in Newtonian. So he's wrong if that's how he's described it.
And the effect of that he's calling gravity is not a force of attraction between masses.
No.
From a more basic point of view. So what I've done in my...
So we need to figure out how we can understand the nonsense that Einstein wrote down with the conceptual medium that you reified. We need to understand that better, do we? No, we don't. I don't know why we're even pondering it, to be honest.
Paper is try to start from a from a point of view where you don't assume gravity to be there. You would like...
Why? So why not do what science would suggest you should do if you're trying to study something, which is first see it, to study it, not first assume that the thing you're going to be studying and trying to explain actually exists. Again, if you're watching this and this doesn't set alarm bells off if you're a globe-believing muppet, then I don't know what will. He's just told you. Yeah? First thing you're going to do isn't see something happening, is assume that it's real. Assume it's there. Yeah. What's there? Don't assume something's there. Just show it me there. Show me space-time. Then we'll do something with what you've shown us. Don't assume you've got bending geodesics in space-time and then figure out how you can simplify this so people can understand it when you describe how it affects their fundamental reality, which it doesn't. 110 people watching. Go ahead, whoever that was.
Yeah, I was going to say, what Einstein did is he came up with a cause, and other people then came up with the effects. So he didn't see any effect, and not only that, but the gravity he explains as an effect has nothing to do with the previous force of attraction between masses. So he just gave everyone the cause of something he never experienced and has never observed. And other people came up with the effects, which is things like the decay rate of cesium being a change in the rate of time, stuff like that.
Like to explain it by seeing how you can derive it from a more microscopic set of equations where gravity itself is not assumed, but then just follow.
So from it being assumed to maths, that's descriptions. So from descriptions of the assumption to it not being assumed anymore. Why? Because you've done some maths on something you assumed. Again, alarm bells.
From a certain
not just math.
He actually said
just math, but yeah, go on, Brian. That's
you
what
say it, if you can remember exactly. Go on, you say it.
Yeah, microscopic math. What is microscopic math?
It's a way of making it sound like you're looking at something through a microscope. You're looking at something very small. Microscopes look at things that are physical. So he's saying microscopic maths to give the mind's eye of the person listening to this the impression that we're looking at the physical and then describing it with maths, when in reality, we're taking an assumption of something we haven't seen happen, describing that with maths, quote unquote, microscopic maths, and then taking it to a place where we don't have to assume the thing that we assumed and mathsed. That's what he's just said.
Reasoning.
This winter.
How should we think
if you
about
think about particles, very tiny particles, then it turns out that things like positions and velocities are not very precisely defined. You have to take into account the fact that there's an uncertainty in when we look at something. We may influence.
Oh, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, that's bollocks. No, that is not correct. Go on, Adam. You got there first.
Well, this is not my forte. You'll be better at this. But when I hear that one, Einstein and Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, the two aren't compatible.
Correct.
Brian, fill it in. There's the. I think Einstein requires you to have a fixed speed and a fixed position, whereas Heisenberg's uncertainty principle dictates that you can either know the position or the speed, or the position, not the two commensurate. And one, as you know one more closely, the other one becomes less defined, which means you can't use that in Einsteinian mathematics. But Heisenberg's is reality based as opposed to Einstein's. That makes sense?
Yes.
Measurement, but maybe also just there's a fundamental limit on how precise you can understand the position or the velocity of a particle. They cannot be not both described infinitely precise.
But why is he doing this? Why is he describing something that's incompatible with Einstein? Is it him making apologetics, do you think, Adam?
I think if he says it, then the contradiction's not there.
Right.
Describing, do you get me? If I say it like this, then the glaringness of it disappears.
It's a rumpus trick. I'll state the devastating failure of my argument up front and then move on past it. Right?
Yeah.
So
bad news on the front
taking
page.
gravity into account then gives us a bit of a problem, because then we have to talk about space-time, and then these quantum uncertainties gives us another way of looking at space-time at a short distance.
Whoa. You're saying that quantum mechanics gives you a way of looking at pseudo-Riemannian four-space reified time through mathematical reification of an Einsteinian idea that you've decided that after you're going to invent it, to maths it, you're going to figure out a way of not having it be invented, but that's somehow the concern of quantum mechanics. No.
He's doing what Brian accused him of earlier, isn't it? They're going backwards to find the causes.
Right.
So once again, they've got something. They've got Heisenberg, and they're going to use that known stuff and interpret it in relation to Einstein. So whatever they see there, somehow they've got to bastardize it to explain how that fits within Einsteinian space-time.
And it doesn't.
No.
You cannot fit this square peg through the round hole. It just does not go.
But I like how
he gave himself away. Oh, you go flat side, I'll go after.
I said I like how he's trying to obfuscate from. No, we don't really want to talk about space-time, but we have to if it just comes up because of Einstein.
Exactly. It's a begging the question loop that he's got himself into. It's like, well, why would we look at Einstein's space-time? Isn't how he's phrased it. It's we've got to look at Einstein because of the work. We've got to look at space-time because of the work of Einstein. It's like he's the one inventing it. It's come from his mind's eye. He's the one that's reified it from his own mathematics. You're saying that that's the cause of why we've got to study gravity because of Einstein?
Yeah.
It's like, oh God. Go ahead, Brian.
That was me agreeing with you. Sorry.
No, my oh God was at him and his reification and circular reasoning that Flatsoid's pointing out.
But we've got the works of C.S. Lewis, haven't we? Therefore, we must explore reality in relation to a wardrobe and how we travel through it.
Right. He has written it down. Therefore, we should really concern ourselves with the time dilation problem of the wardrobe. Yeah. That is something we should concern ourselves with. Why? Well, because of the work of C.S. Lewis. We wouldn't be concerning ourselves with it otherwise.
Well, the part I picked up on was when he said, we have another way of looking at it. You haven't seen it in the first place.
Yes, exactly. That's the best way to summarise it, Brian.
How could you be looking at a second of it?
Exactly. He's justifying a non-reason for looking at it, and it's the original origin of the thing he's supposed to be looking at it. But he hasn't got anything to look at. Exactly. AQE.
This led to problems, and string theory is another way of...
It's not theory. Again, just to explain, theories are based on scientifically validated cause and effect reasoning with supposition of cause for a phenomena you have studied in nature. String theory. No. Definitely not. What's the observed phenomena again? Anyone hear those crickets?
Of also looking at gravity and quantum mechanics, which I've been working on quite a bit.
Oh, have you now? You've been working on gravity and quantum mechanics. I see. So therefore, you've done some systematic experimentation in terms of your quantum scientific validation that you'll definitely have, because it is, and you'll have realised that gravity's a load of old tosh because it has no scientific validation that you've obviously got when you went to quantum mechanics.
So people have studied the problem of quantum gravity.
Sorry, the problem of quantum gravity. Whoa. I thought you were studying the two like they were compatible, but now you're immediately into studying the incompatibility of something. Well, there's no incompatibility. Gravity's not a thing to have an incompatibility with. So no, there's no issue.
Disclaimer.
Say again?
That's the disclaimer from earlier on. The problem of quantum mechanics in gravity, which is what we highlighted as soon as he said, Heisenberg, that he's going to have this mismatch. And now he's just stating it. He's looking into it. But again, it goes back. They've got the quantum mechanics and they're asking, how does this make sense with regards to Einstein? How can we interpret quantum mechanics in Einsteinian theory? Not the other way around. Why? We can throw Einstein away because, look, we've got real physics here and it opposes it. He's not saying that. He's saying, how can I crowbar it back in? How can I resuscitate gravity with quantum mechanics, even though it's a problem?
Which it shouldn't ever be the case if the scientific validation that if you accept that the world has order, then you're not going to scientifically validate the cause of an effect and find that it's incompatible with some other experiment that you've done somewhere else. They may not be mutually inclusive, but you're never going to find that they're incompatible because the world works. And if you figured out why it works, you're not going to find, well, because I know how this works, that doesn't. It demonstrates admirably that gravity is nonsense. Suddenly you've got something that is scientifically validated and you've got to back engineer nonsense from years ago to work with the scientific validation of something that you found out recently. It's like, no, your quote-unquote theories from Einstein and Newton weren't ever theories. There was no compatibility or validation given them to in the first place. There was just words from priests. And now you've got to work with actual science to try and go, oh, we can't just poo-poo it. It's actually helped humanity progress. So we've got to engineer in our nonsense to it, so that's a problem. What, with the scientific advancement of humanity being incompatible with your nonsense you made up and called theories? That's not a problem for anybody but you. In fact, it's not a problem. Quite the contrary, it's giving you a job.
Well, I see it differently. I see it as, when it comes to quantum mechanics, that he is such a pseudoscientist that he's one of these people that adds in things like quantum field theory as quantum mechanics, because they, as QE says, they add the word quantum to make it sound like it's part of something more real. And so things like that. So that's why he's able to start making a bridge between the quantum mechanics in his own head and things like general relativity.
So we're gonna is he going to come? We're going to get quantum foam out of him.
It's possible.
We'll see.
Quantum mechanics and gravity from very specific.
Go on.
I'm saying, well, it's the same as having me 2 hours ahead of you guys, so I'm simultaneously in the past and the future at the same time, based on gravity that's there, not there at the same time.
Look, I agree. This is being filmed 3 years in the future. Technically, we're all in Aruba right now.
Perspective from string theory, but also by thinking, for instance, about black holes. What happens with black holes?
What happens with them? Well, they're an observed phenomenon.
Okay,
if you're going to claim that, you could actually science them. Go on, whoever that was. Is that Gene?
I'd like to give a shout out to Dr. Becky.
Shout out retracted.
And I've taken some of the things we've learned about it and seen that there is some explanation of maybe where gravity then comes from.
An explanation. Excellent. So we've got what could be, borderline, but could be described as a naturally occurring phenomena in the form of black holes. Right? You could show us something, and you could say that something's happening. Right? So an explanation would be to derive the cause of that effect, if you're going to call it an effect. Natural, yeah, at a push, you could. Okay, so you've got what you call a naturally occurring phenomena of black holes, then you need to suppose a cause of it. Supposition of cause in an prediction is called a hypothesis. If A would be your supposition, A being your supposed cause of the black hole being B. the phenomena that you're studying. So if A, supposition, you will assume causes the black hole, then B, black holes. In a validatable scientific prediction, you've also got the antithesis of your prediction. So instead of if A, then B, if your prediction or presumed cause, then black holes, then if your prediction, not black holes. So when you go forth to vary that which you assume will cause black holes, because you're only ever trying to validate the alternative, so you're going to vary it in the hope that you cause a black hole. Because that's what you're trying to do with cause and effect reasoning that's called the scientific method. So you vary something and see if it causes black holes, and if it does, you've got the validated cause of the effect you've studied, i.e. the cause of black holes. Or you vary what you assume causes black holes and it doesn't cause them. Therefore, you validated that which you assumed to be the cause not to be the cause. You proved that it wasn't. Now, that's what you can do if you're going to explain black holes, because that's what you're getting when you do experiments in science. Explanations. Now, I absolutely guarantee, I will stake my reputation on it, that this guy will not go forth in the next 2 or 3 sentences to state that.
From those...
Nathan,
yeah, go on.
quickly. Did you say we can observe black holes?
I peppered that with a few Weasley words. Did you not hear them? They say, and
yeah.
you could present at a stretch. Did you not hear all the Weasel words I peppered it with?
The
No, I
only
just
one I've
haven't
seen.
I won't lie, I didn't, because I had the same question on that Brian just asked. Like, black holes, don't those have to be a thing before they become a dependent variable?
Where's Arwin? Arwin, argue that there is black holes, that you could show that they're a naturally occurring phenomena. You could do it. You could. I said it was a stretch, but I could easily visualize a globe birth believer coming in and in sincerity saying, no, black holes are a phenomena that I can show you with sincerity, and then present something to make that in some way plausible as a semi-substantiable claim.
I've
right?
got it. I've got one. I'd like to quote Holly. So they are difficult to find, but the thing about a black hole, its main distinguishing feature is it's black. The thing about space, the colour of space, your basic space colour is it's black. So how are you supposed to see them?
Well, because of the fabric of space-time, that would be the medium, the fourth dimension, invented in the mind's eye of Einstein. When a massive black hole has light passing by it, then it warps, or you could say dilates, the light through the bending geodesic of the mass of the black hole. And that warping of the light is what we will actually see. So obviously, given Adam's infallible logic, that if the black hole's black and space is black, then how the hell are you going to see it? Well, you will see the effect, which coincidentally is a gravitational fourth-dimensional space-time geodesic bending effect, causing the light to warp around it in a donut shape. There's your phenomena. Are we all clear about why I used the weasel words? I didn't think we'd get into this, but that's why I put them in there. Just in case I was held to task, which I was.
So the cause of this bending of space-time...
Shh! Don't use that word. Just say what we see. You don't have to say cause.
Okay. We suppose... I haven't seen it. Supposedly, it has been seen that there is some kind of a circular light phenomenon happens in the sky.
Yes. May I present to you my donut? Insert picture of donut here. Okay, so we're all clear. So we can move on, right? Yeah, I can say he's got a...
not at all. This is
my example wasn't to... He got close enough for me to say that, here we go, you've got something you could claim to be a phenomena. He is. He's saying it's he's calling it, he's giving it a name and a title. It's a black hole, right? The fact that it's come out of necessity from Einstein mathematics of geodesics and space-time bending and the effects that would create in his mathematical descriptions, them being attributed to a light that's been seen in the sky, that we would argue. But for the purposes of me disseminating what the scientific method would entail for his claim to be observed phenomena of a black hole, he would adhere to it by varying and manipulating that which he assumed caused the effect he's observing. Now, we could argue the toss all day about there not being a phenomena. It doesn't mean it's not going to be taken as a useful opportunity for me to disseminate what he would be doing if he had a phenomena that he claims he has, if he followed the scientific method, which is where I was going with all of that.
Yeah, but if I can't observe these, that what you're talking about, these donut-shaped lights, then where do we go from there?
Well, you just weren't at the right place at the right time to see the geodesic and space-time bending to cause the light to warp in a dilated, warped geodesic bent space-time phenomena. You know, you just weren't there, man. What do you want?
Excuse
How do
me.
you distinguish?
Excuse me. My citation is, Brenda. The hole in the donut is space-time. Thank you.
Brenda did actually say that. That was actually a Globe Believer's quote. Do you want to say that again, please, Chocolate? Because that's a quote from a genuine Globe Believer who came here to argue the toss about reifying space-time.
Oh, would you like me to share it? I could pass that
yes,
over
please.
to you
We
real
might as well hear it said. Why not?
Yeah. Give me a second.
No worries. We'll have a little bit of this. Go on.
I just want you to know that what the phenomenon that he's claiming is gravitational lensing. Now, there's a lot of stuff that would have to be proven before you could get to calling something that we haven't ever seen gravitational lensing.
Right. I want to know how you make a distinguishment in observation between a black hole with bendy light forming a donut-shaped appearance and a donut-shaped light. How do you make that distinguishment?
I was
between
getting
the
there.
two?
That's where I was going with this guy's interjection,
Right.
though. But that's where this is going to end up, because he's going to ascribe the cause of the light that is the donut to be the gravity, when he's describing it initially as an effect of gravity and the excuse for seeing it, i.e. the black hole and the gravitational lensing. Sorry, what did I call it? I didn't call it. I call it dilating time. It wasn't. It's lensing. Brian's right. Good job you're here. That's correct. Sorry if I got my terminology wrong. If you're a fundy and somehow that offends you. But yes, Brian's right. It's lensing, not whatever I said, which was wrong. Anyway, yes, Adam. He's going to ascribe the cause to it. He's going to say the cause of the light bending around what we are calling a black hole is now devoid of an explanation for why it is a black hole or the light's bending around it, because it's causally linked to my gravity. Now let's get on to proving it, because we found a way of not having to assume it anymore. Suddenly it's a causal influencer.
That audio is in Master D if you want it.
You know the hole in a donut? That's space-time.
You're a moron.
No.
I don't think we need any more. That was brilliant. Thank you, Chocolate. Shout out to Unisox Femi. Donut without a hole doesn't appear to have space-time. Now that's called a jammy donut.
What? But you cut it off. Your response to it, how mad you got, was actually the best part, because it was so stupid.
You're a moron. Shut up.
in a donut
Shut up. Don't
is
say anything
space-time.
else. Don't make me remove you. Shut up. You've got nothing more to add. You're a moron.
In the donut,
I couldn't
Brenda.
care less.
Wow.
You're a moron. Don't
The
add
hole
anything more.
in a donut.
Shut
The
up.
hole
I don't
is
want to
Swiss
have to
cheese.
eject you.
Space-time.
If you want to continue spouting shite about holes in donuts, I'm going to kick you out. Last chance. Shut up. Any evidence?
No, I thought you were about debate. I thought you were about
You
fair
can fuck off
debate.
right now. You can fuck off. I was asking a new question. Now you don't get to take. No swearing, Nathan, from the past. God damn you. No blaspheming, Nathan, from the present.
No blaspheming. No blaspheming in the present.
That's what I said. I agree. 10th. Outrageous.
I know. Okay. That is the fun. That was so funny to think that the gap in the donut is space time.
Right. Let's just come to Brenda's defence. Thanks, 10th. She means what I
Can you
meant.
play that one
No. We've descended it into absurdity because of our phraseology was put to us in that instance. It was absurd, and it is absurd, and we're disseminating how absurd it is. But because of how we've described it in shorthand form as being the lensing of light, claimed to be the bending of light through a geodesic in the mass of the black hole, etc. Right? That is the absence of light in the centre of what we're going to describe as a donut. That's what she meant. And she's using shorthand form too. So while we might want to jump down her throat, now that we've just spent 10 minutes qualifying this, Can we all agree that that is what she actually meant? But just by the way it sounds, and after qualification, the way it actually is, it is absurd. Therefore, on the one hand, it's fair to ridicule her, but on the other hand, if you're just going to ridicule her for just saying, well, it's the hole in the donut, if you don't contextualise the fact that she means what we're talking about right now with black holes and lensing of light through geodesics in space-time, she just didn't use that sentence. We can say that, well, it wouldn't be fair to ridicule her just for that, given that we're qualifying it too. And going, oh, the donut.
But she doesn't preface it, and we do. That's the difference.
Yeah, I said Arwen. And because she doesn't, that's why it's ludicrous, and we can, therefore, ridicule her for it. Because it is ludicrous. How it was phrased, how it sounded, and after qualification, how it is.
And it's all wrong, because everybody knows it's not the hole in the donuts, it's the hole in a bagel.
Right, and for you to get away with that would mean... Arwen's timing's beautiful. For Arwen to get away with that, and for us to laugh, means we understand the premise of the hole in the bagel is representative of the lens, the gravitational lensing experienceable of the toasty warm dough, right? That's the light. Well, that comparison, while humorous, is just the shorthand form that we're finding funny. And it's not reasonable to ridicule Brenda just based on the fact that she's not saying space-time's a donut. She's just using the shorthand form. But that isn't what we're ridiculing her for. We're ridiculing her because it is a ludicrous notion, and in shorthand form it sounds ludicrous.
Brenda's opening at the shoe is a black hole. It's dilating time.
I can't even defend that one flat sword, so yeah, I'm not even going to try.
No, I don't agree with any of that. Brenda was talking about a donut from Dunkin' Donuts. That's what Brenda was talking about. If you listen to the rest of the quotes, Brenda, if you just listen to Brenda for an hour from 3 years ago, and you'll know she's talking about actual donuts that you can eat, not gravitational lensing. I don't agree with that for a moment.
Get out of town. No.
No, but Brian is right. She was constantly doing that. I mean, remember, dog bones are clocks? She was getting all literal. Like, at first, like, it's supposed to be metaphorical, what she's saying, but then she just makes everything literal as she's talking. It's complete insanity. That's what she does.
Well, to Brenda, phenomena.
She can do it. What? Chocolate. Are you there? So, I've got a phenomena of a shoe. Could you give me a hypothesis for that?
It's not a phenomenon.
The hypothesis is it's a shoe. So, respectfully to Nathan, unfortunately, as I remember back now, I think she was on donuts, mate, not on...
Do I need to share that one too?
Yeah, I've got to explain myself even further because what Adam said. In isolation, this show, if you just watched this show without any context for what Brenda is or what Brenda does, and you heard us spend 10 minutes qualifying what would be or could be described visually as a donut-looking shape, and then qualify how they would potentially describe it as a naturally occurring phenomena with the mass of the presupposed black hole causing a bent geodesic in space-time to such a degree that light lenses. There you go, that was one concise rendition. Well, given that that would be the context of this show in isolation, it would be unfair for an audience member to hear it and go, well, in isolation, it just sounds like she was talking about what they were talking about. Why would they ridicule her? Now, you can go, well, no, we know she's a complete dumbass. In fact, she was actually talking about Dunkin' Donuts, right? Which may also be the case knowing Brenda. But either way, in isolation, I think I still feel it's worth qualifying, just so it doesn't seem like we're overly harsh when someone's using a shorthand term like donut, even though in this case she probably was actually talking about a sprinkle-covered toasted donuts. I don't know why we're having this conversation. This is nuts. Some days on Flat Earth Debate, it is fun to be alive, you know. Life seems weird until you get here and realise how stupid life can really be.
It's not just nuts, it's donuts.
It is, yes, indeed. Go on, Ted.
Hey, you're all smarter than me.
Go on, Ted.
We've had our fair share of, we've had our fair fair share of these snipe comments from the opposition, from Fight the Flat Earth saying my hand is not really there, to donuts, to shoe being a natural phenomenon. So, I mean, at some point, these people need help.
I agree. I've got an idea for a video I might do. I put it out in Master B and Ballbusters Skype chat. Did anybody see my idea?
I didn't understand it. I didn't look at the video, so I didn't understand.
Yeah, I did.
You did?
I did.
What did you think?
Yeah, I watched the video in full, and I know what you want to do.
I'm going to need help to do it. So I'll just tell the audience, because it might be that just me describing it is as good as making the video itself, right? So maybe I can put a link to this. Should really do it, because I'd rather the guy got credit, because it's where I've got this idea from. And as I say, just describing the idea may be as good as me actually going to the huge amount of effort of actually making it. Okay, so recently I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet for Scientology. And one of the guys that I've been watching is called Chris Shelton. And Chris Shelton, whose channel name is Chris Shelton, which is SHELTON, MSC. You can go and check out this video that I am tempted to do a sort of one-for-one remake of. Now, his video is called Recovering from Scientology. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stick this into Skype, and hopefully somebody will spam this in the chat of the live stream. We're going to stay live for another 10 minutes in case anybody's worried that we're going to, or we have run over, I already know. So I've stuck this in FED back office. Can someone spam this in the live stream chat just while I'm waffling?
Already done, mate.
Perfect, thank you very much. Okay, so in his video, he's going through his, to a small degree, story of escaping Scientology. But he's moreover explaining to anybody who may have come from Scientology how they can best move on from the indoctrination and the cult-like behaviour and the general control of this cult. Now, as he's going through it, and I'm listening to it, I'm thinking there's maybe one or two words that could be changed from Scientology to heliocentrism. And the context and everything around what he said wouldn't change one bit. Now, there is an exception. I think it was points, if I can remember correctly, 5 and 6. But 1 through 4 and 7 and 8 points were one for one. I could just take out one word and replace it with the other. But then when you get to point 7 and point 8, I'd just have to take out pictures of famous Scientologists that are influential in this regard, or in his context for Scientology, and just change it to my context for heliocentrism. You know, so by coincidence, there's even a Neil deGrasse Tyson quote in there for how you should invalidate pseudoscience claims. It's epic. I'd keep that in word for word with Neil deGrasse Tyson as the example. In other words, fundies on the globe, even your own priests tell you how you can disavow their total pseudoscience nonsense, because it's the best of magicians that are using the pseudoscience nonsense that lean on the strength of real science when they claim it. It's a beautiful magic trick that works against them when someone like me comes along. Or when someone who doesn't realise that Neil deGrasse Tyson himself is using that magic trick will use him as some sort of an authority for decrying pseudoscience nonsense like Scientology, when I can use the exact quote from Tyson to decry heliocentrism. And I may well do so. But the point of the video, as I say, is to take people through the steps of how they've been indoctrinated, recognising it and moving away from it. And there's no difference in the control that's being utilised in heliocentrism and the control that this guy's helping people distance themselves from. There's no difference. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a bit in the middle, like I say, points 5 and 6, where it's so Scientology specific that I wouldn't want to try and spin them in any way. I'd just remove them from his video if I remade it and just substituted in a few different characters on the last couple of points and changed Scientology to heliocentrism. So I may or may not do it, but it's worth a laugh, especially if you're interested in what I see as a very close parallel to heliocentrism anyway, which is Scientology. Yeah, it's got some more religious aspects to it, but the basis of the overall faith and what they disseminate about thetans is based in heliocentrism. It's 1 for 1. There's no alteration at all. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. If you do actually get to look at that video and watch it, it's only about 10 minutes long. Maybe subscribe to him. He's got some interesting stories about Scientology, and he keeps up with the current legal wrangle dangles that they get into, which is also fascinating. I like that stuff. But yeah, maybe check him out. Maybe tell him Nathan Oakley 1980 sent you. Just 1 sec, 10th. So maybe tell him Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, and yeah, tell him the reasoning for why you're there. Yeah, I escaped a cult too. It's called heliocentrism. Oh, are you still a part of that cult? Oh, how interesting. Don't troll him. Don't troll him. He's a nice guy. Go on, Ted.
When I watched the video, Nathan, I screen captured that Neil deGrasse. It's in Master D, so we were thinking the same.
Oh, perfect. I can actually stick this up, right? I will do. So for the live audience, there we go. Do you want to read it out?
I'm having problems with my internet delay mode here, so I can tell. Why don't you read it?
Yeah, if I'm honest, my colourblind eyes cannot read whatever colour that is on whatever background that is. I can read the bits on his shirt. Someone read it out. Go on.
Chocolate, you or me?
Chocolate, please.
That's what I thought.
What did you say the same thing? Did we jinx?
I knew if it was a preference of who voice to read it out, we'd go silky smooth. So that's why I acquiesced straight away.
Where is it?
In Master B, I believe. Wow, this was super slick.
Cool.
It's right in front of me as well. If I wasn't so bloody
colourblind. I don't have that much
colourblind.
of a delay. I'll just read it. My goodness. Look, I didn't know it was your delay was going to be worse than my delay. I could read it.
You could, or we could have several protracted long
Science
silences.
literacy is not just what you know. I'm trying. I'm going to drop and rejoin.
I'll do it, bloody hell.
I think we should have more silences. I think we should drag this out more. By the time we've read it, every member of the live audience who isn't only listening as driving along or whatever it is that they do when they're not looking will have read it already. So, you know, as the live numbers drop, actually they're not 107 people watching.
Right. Science literacy is not just what you know, but how your brain is wired for thought. If you can achieve that, you never have to ask if the moon landings are real again. Wow. That took a second to sink in.
Can you read it again?
Yes.
Scientology is not just what you know, but how your brain is wired for thought. If you can achieve that, you never have to ask if the Palladians are real again.
Love it.
Very good, Tim.
But what about the Bolognian people?
But science literacy, what is science literacy? Understanding what the scientific method is, understanding cause and effect reasoning based on hypothesis, experimentation and the validation of the cause and effect that you're studying. That's scientific literacy. Well, if you've got all those things, you'll never be asking if the moon landings are real. You'll know they're not.
He's not lying again, is he? You see how it's a statement of truth?
Yep.
It's just how you interpret it.
Yep. That's why he's my favourite. Neil deGrasse Tyson is head and shoulders above all of the other heliocentric magicians. That's why he's promoted, popularised, given the breadth to do what he does that he is. Because he's good. You know, I'm not going to deny it. I have got a lot of admiration for Neil deGrasse Tyson. When I was a heliocentrist, I did. I enjoyed watching him. Not only for the content that he provided, but for the visual, fantastic nature of the stuff that he would be stood in front of when he was talking about it. The CGI was amazing whenever Neil deGrasse Tyson was involved in the decent production.
And his ties were second to none.
The what,
He's very charismatic, and he really knows you how to pull in a story with his voice, right?
He does.
I actually watched that whole Cosmos show that he had. I remember watching it binge watching it with my girl, my ex-girl. Shit, it's like, can't believe from there where I am now. It's hilarious when I believed all that crap. But
Cosmo,
at the time
that was the
watching it, I was
show.
always like, this is all nice, very nice CGI.
I was amazed by it. The
Yeah.
other day he said something and he accused God of not being all powerful and all loving. So I have no use for Neil deGrasse Tyson. And everybody was cheering him. They cheer a jerk.
Do you want to do?
It's worth finishing Erik. It's worth finishing Erik Verlinde, the video we're reviewing. It gets really good.
New way of thinking about quantum mechanics and gravity together. So if you then start trying to explain where it comes from, it has to do with...
You already told us where it comes from. It was imagined by Einstein. He wrote it down and then tried to figure out a way of not having to assume it. So we already know where it came from.
the fact that there's at a microscopic scale...
Oh, at a microscopic scale, was that when you were trying to figure out a way of not assuming it to be real by using the microscopic what's the word? When it's mathemagical... There's a mathemagicalation. I can't really think of the word. I'm making it up as I go along anyway. But anyway, is
mathematical. Yeah.
You're going to do it now. Let's not have Alvin stumble over the same bastardization of two words. Right, what he's doing is, earlier, 10th Man pointed out that what he's trying to do is take the mathematics of something he's assumed to be real and describe that as being put under the microscope with his phraseology. And 10th was like, well, why has he used that term? Well, here's why. Because now he's talking about it at the microscopic scale. Well, there is no microscopic scale for the maths, the descriptions that you did. What mathematics? Oh, it was the microscopic mathematics.
Certain information about how you
Alright, I got the word, by the way. It's mathematicalization.
Yeah, but I was trying to slip in magic into that word. That's the word I could have used that word, but I was trying to slip in the word magic in between.
Mathemagicalization. Then.
Perfect. There it is.
And that's what's happening here. This is just from a maths point of view. He's using the term microscopic scale. Well, from my understanding, that's the same as the macro scale. It's only when we go to the quantum scale, we've got different ways of mathematically describing stuff. So why he keeps referencing this microscopic, I'm unsure as it's relevant. Is it to allude to quantum, but not actually say quantum? I don't understand.
Yes, and him inserting gravity and the descriptions of something that was invented by Einstein in or by a means of trying to not have to assume it when they put the maths at a microscopic level. That's how he phrased it earlier on, like 2 minutes earlier.
The way that I when he said it, I'm
sorry. What maths?
What's going on here?
Gravity maths for the fourth dimensional space-time bending.
Did he show that?
No, but he described it as the microscopic mathematics.
No such animal. We want to see the mathematics for what he's talking about. Don't we?
Yeah,
first?
I was thinking along the lines of.
Sorry.
We'll have to accept.
I was thinking along the lines of.
10th will keep going. So when you hear someone, you're just going to have to keep going, 10th, because of the delay. You're the only one with a really severe delay, so just keep going. Just plow on, and we'll accept it.
Got you. All right. So I was thinking of the number 1, how it could be described as 2 halves equal 1, or 4 1/4 equal 1. I'm thinking logically, reasoning in my mind, how do you do microscopic math? Well, you could break 1 into segments. What's he talking about is ridiculous. It's based on an assumption, something never seen or proven.
Ourselves, we forget about that. And it turns out that if you take that into account in some appropriate way, that you can understand where gravity comes from.
You didn't tell us where it comes from. You were asking where it comes from and trying to figure out a way of not having to assume it. But without giving any qualification, somehow we've now got a way of understanding where it comes from. You didn't give us any of that.
Where what comes from? What is gravity?
He didn't tell us. But now apparently we've got a way through his convoluted word salad of understanding where it comes from what we just pulled apart. Well, there was nothing in that. We pulled it all apart that suggested that we should have any inference of where gravity comes from. But that's what he stated at the end. I don't know if that was in the edit, but bloody hell, no, you didn't. No, we're not. No, we aren't. I haven't got a clue. I know it isn't a real thing based purely on what you said, because we've reacted to it as you've said it.
The theory that Einstein wrote down.
The theory that Einstein wrote down. Writing things down doesn't make them theories. Theories come after experiments. Experiments are the actualization of hypotheses. Hypotheses establishes your presumed cause of a phenomena you're studying in nature. All Einstein did was imagine and write down. It's not a theory.
When you apply it, for instance, to these black holes, you see...
When you apply it to something that is also fundamental to Einstein's quote-unquote theory, so you're now applying things within the theory to the theory,
see that it starts resembling things that we call thermodynamics. That's
Do they? Black holes resemble thermodynamics. What, for example, gas expansion into a volume, when black holes are described to suck all things out of existence. I don't think these black hole things conform with thermodynamic laws in any way, shape, or form. You know, quite the opposite.
A theory that describes how gases move when they give them a temperature or when they're...
Get faster. There you go. That was quick. Didn't have anything to do with black holes.
Pressure and you...
Pressure? What, like the force gases exert on the walls of their containment or on other gases in the surrounding area? Well, that is violated by the very description that Einstein convoluted when he came up with black holes and the nonsense for them. So how are you going to, in any way, bridge the gap between thermodynamic laws and Einstein's nonsense? Let's see how he gets on.
Well, you can apply it in very many situations, but it's some way in which we describe how things happen at fairly large scales.
So you're telling me that thermodynamic laws don't apply at all scales? Or is it just that your problem with thermodynamic laws when you've got a sky vacuum and gas not expanding into it on a very big Earth mass, somehow that's a problem because it doesn't conform with thermodynamic laws? So at your scales, there's a big problem because gas isn't behaving that way in your model for your sphere Earth in a vacuum. That's not a problem for thermodynamic laws. They're just descriptions of things that happen always. Now, if it was the case that the heliocentric model of an Earth as a sphere in a sky vacuum was real, then we wouldn't be calling them thermodynamic laws anymore, because that would be the violation of those laws. Now, we definitely still do describe gas behaviour with laws of nature, because that's how gas behaves, and there is no violation of it. Your model doesn't supersede what we experience in physical reality, and it isn't a problem when your model doesn't conform with reality. Let's just get that clear. Thermodynamics is merely descriptions of things that we see occur always. It doesn't have anything to do with the violation that your model presents to those laws and descriptions of things that occur always.
In terms of not looking at the individual motion of the atoms and molecules, but by just thinking about these objects.
So to overcome the problem, we're not going to look at the physical gas behavior, but we're going to start thinking about it. Why? Shouldn't we just look at how it physically behaves if you're going to be describing fundamental forces in nature? I would say that you'd start with looking at how it behaves, because that's where science begins. Looking at how things behave and asking why they behave like that. Not telling your audience that in this instance, when it comes to heliocentric gravity, you're going to do the polar opposite and literally declare that you're not going to look at the thing that's happening.
Objects like temperature, pressure, and so on, which...
So you're going to think about those things, but you're not going to look at gas behavior. Okay, gotcha. Why not?
Are what I call microscopic...
So we're just going to go on to what you call them. So why are you just like moving around the world naming things? And telling us what we can't look at when you start naming things?
Quantities. I mean, a temperature is something that is just an average of all of the motions.
Motions that we aren't looking at. So we're not looking at them, the motions. We're thinking about them and describing them in terms of their motions. So the problem is solved by describing the motions, but not looking at the motions. That's what he's telling you. Preceded by an motions, the ones that we won't be looking at. You can tell a lot when people pause.
So the little collisions of...
Collisions? Well, we're not looking at the gas behaviour in physical reality anymore, so what collisions? In this haphazard nonsense that's going to be juxtaposed in a gravitational fourth dimension, we're not looking at them anymore, my friend. You told us that we weren't, and then when we got to the movements of them, suddenly we are describing them in your mathematical reification of fourth dimensional space-time bending. Not the actual gas behaviour. That's a problem with thermodynamics.
Atoms, say for instance on my skin, if I think about what temperature I feel, it says something about the average energy that each of the molecules in the air is carrying.
Yeah, but you're thinking about the temperature that you experience in your skin as opposed to studying the gas behaviour. So you're basically giving apologetics for how you can think of things that aren't what you're studying, in this case, the thermodynamics of gas behaviour, and describing something that isn't the thermodynamics of gas behaviour and instead the sensory perception of your skin. Well, those two things aren't the same now, are they? One has influence over the other, but you've already told us that we're not going to be looking at that now, are we?
So temperature is not really a microscopic thing I can define.
Is it not? Does temperature not occur at the microscopic level? That seems absurd. Why would you state such nonsense?
And so gravity is somewhat like that in this.
Oh, I see why you'd say such nonsense, because the following statement is going to be about gravity. Of course, and we've qualified already that we're not really talking about how gas behaves.
Sense that the equations that we currently use.
The equations. So it sounds like you're flipping between things that might be occurring in nature that we're not looking at, being described in mathematics, and then being juxtaposed with things that actually happen in nature when we're told that we're not going to be looking at them.
To describe gravity are basically obtained from averaging or at least describing things at a much tinier scale and then forgetting about certain details.
Why? You know, in terms of laws of nature, the thing that are apparently problems for you, they just observe things in nature and describe how they occur. It's not like they're exclusive of certain details. Just a description of things that happen. Now, those descriptions, not even cause and effect reasoning validated by science, just descriptions, i.e. laws of nature, invalidate the very premises of your models in fourth dimensional space-time. Quote-unquote problems. Not really, just nonsense heliocentrism and its gravity that doesn't exist.
So temperature, for instance, also forgets about how...
Sorry, temperature forgets. Ding, 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 reification fallacy.
All of the individual molecules are moving. We don't...
Sorry, temperature doesn't make gas molecules forget about the fact they're moving.
Have to keep track of that.
They don't have to keep track of them. They haven't got little notepads. Textbook reification fallacy.
But still we can describe quite well how gases move when...
Why not? Just ask them for their notes.
We just talk about pressure and temperature and even...
Talk about it? What about describing it based on the actual behaviour of gas? Obviously, we're not going to be looking at it. And obviously, we're just going to be describing it and thinking about the movements that we're not actually looking at.
Differences in pressure, for instance. Then...
Why have we got differences in a hypothetical imaginary gas pressure that we're not looking at in physical reality described in a fourth dimensional space-time bending? This is absurd.
If you have one room with one pressure and another room with a lower pressure, you simply know that the gas will flow from one to the other.
So if we've got a high-pressure gas that we're all breathing, and we've got a room next to it, let's say it's not really a room because there's no wall between them, but we'll call it a sky vacuum, then we know implicitly that the high-pressure gas will go from here to there. We just know that will happen. This man has just debunked outer space. I'm going to listen to that again.
Pressure, another room with a lower pressure, you simply know that the gas will flow from one to the other.
So there's high pressure gas here on Earth. Let's just bring that up. Why isn't that working? Oh, yes, it is. So here's a picture of a high pressure system akin to the description he gave of one room and a low pressure system. Let's call that the other room. Now, obviously, in his example, he's got a barrier in the form of a wall and a door between the two that he can open to let the pressure equalise. Now, in this example of his bullshit heliocentric sky vacuum with a spinning ball Earth in it, there's no barrier. But there's definitely a 10 to the minus 17 torr claim vacuum next to a high-pressure gas. And according to this dude, we know that one will move into the other. Ergo, the sky is not a vacuum. If the sky was a vacuum, then the gas we breathe would fill the space. And with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Fortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. And another massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on an after show. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!